The ebbs and flows of the game of basketball can stylistically be correlated to a lot of things in life, but I think more than anything else in the world, I think you can look directly at music. I'm looking at you, music. Are you? Oh, there you are. Hi, music. Hello, music. You look like basketball. So the reason that I think that they're so similar is because if you think of any song in any genre, compositionally or lyrically or structurally, in any genre, they're generally going to look the same, spanning decades, right? And it's going to take revolution after revolution, spinning those same tracks, getting them all pressed to vinyl before something magical happens. A culmination of a bunch of genres happen. Like, think of rap, for example, okay? So the evolution of hip-hop was like funk and electronic and R&B and spoken word and all these different things into a little pot. And then what's in this little pot? What is this thing? Oh, it's rap. Wow, that's pretty cool. What should we do with this? We should use it forever? Awesome. Let's use that. That was really fun. I like that. Basketball. That happens all the time. Happens all the time in basketball. Sometimes it's going to take 10 to 15 years, but there's going to be that generational talent who completely shifts the paradigm of basketball. And stylistically, the way that it's played is going to change before our very eyes, more often than not because of one player. Now, of course, this is super rare, and it's why it only happens every 10 to 15 years. And the player that we're going to be talking about today is not directly responsible for that, but they do fit the blueprint perfectly. So when one player leads the charge and enough teams have to follow suit because they think, wow, that really works. We should do what that player and what that team is doing. When enough teams do that and follow suit, eventually you're going to have said evolution. So today, the game of basketball has followed suit with the likes of gender and sexuality, and it's increased its fluidity over the last few years. Now, to whose credit you decide to give this to is entirely up to you. You can say Steph, you can say the Warriors as a whole, you can say Daryl Morey and the Rockets, and you're probably on a better track right there. But ultimately, positions don't matter anymore. And if you're going to sit there and you're going to try to tell me that they matter, gross. Because they don't. And I think that honestly, what is this? What is that? Is that a little... That's a hole. That is simply no good. Now, the product of this has been smaller guys getting thrown into some wonky lineups, generally tasked with defending anywhere between 1 through 5, because that's where the game is at today. More often than not, I also feel like that they're going to be defensive specialists while not being completely incapable offensively. Defense is what they're going to specialize in. So because of that, what player does every championship team need this year? If you're a contender, who do you want? Who are we talking about today? It's Chris Kaman. Yeah, I know. No, it's Bruce Brown. Now, as a Pistons fan, I don't need to tell you that we have often missed on players or actually drafted the right players and then have completely given up on them, like Chris Middleton or Spencer Dinwiddie. Or sometimes we'll actually hit on these guys and then we just inexplicably give up on them. But in Bruce's case, I think it's really interesting because when we traded him to Brooklyn, the one thing that you knew about, well, we need to go back further. Up and down in the G League in his first year after being a second-round pick, playing under Jim Larinaga in Miami. Played a lot of point guard in college. Then he comes to the NBA. We try to move into a shooting guard position. And you notice one thing about him. Not entirely capable offensively, but the tools are certainly there. It's his defense, though, that really gets you excited. So after his first year, we go to Vegas, okay? It's the Summer League, and we put Bruce at the point guard, and he put up the second triple-double in the history of the Summer League, which was technically actually the third one that ever happened. He was just the second player to do it. Bruce Brown was awesome in the Summer League, and we were like, wait, point guard Bruce Brown is a thing? You go into that regular season, and Casey was often reluctant to actually put him in that position, but whenever he was given minutes at the point, he emerged as a really interesting playmaker, a really dynamic off-ball threat, and obviously more than anything in the world, a defensive specialist, okay? I remember very vividly he locked down Kyrie, James Harden, and Trae Young all in the span of a month. Now, of course, that goes with some like one-on-one, specifically like one-on-one on-ball defense. I think Kyrie actually ended up with a triple-double in the game that I'm referencing, but when Bruce was guarding him specifically, they kept switching off of him for this very reason. It was free. It was free every single time. Offensively, you saw his game improve a lot. He was attacking the rim pretty confidently. He really liked that three ball a lot from the corner. That proved to be a very high percentage shot for him. And then inexplicably, he was traded to Brooklyn. Now, the reason I was okay with this was because we learned something about Bruce, is that Detroit had accumulated these so many players on a roster where it was like all these young guys would be really good role players, but you're asking them to do things that like Donovan Mitchell would have to do, and that's just not going to fly. What everybody knew about Bruce Brown, if you were a Pistons fan, was that he was a pest defensively. Offensively, he was a fun little playmaker. He was really creative with the ball, great cutter. He was shifty. There was something there. But ultimately, we realized that he was sort of the Tony Allen type, right? This guy who is so fluid. He kind of makes up his own position, but it's not what you need on a rebuilding team. You know where you do need that, though? a contender. Because that is a glue guy that I want going to war for me in a 7-game series. That is a guy who you look at Game 3 against Milwaukee, if you're Brooklyn, and you look at the way that Brook Lopez in drop coverage is defending Bruce Brown every time he would attack the rim and he would go downhill. Brook would just not put a hand up on Bruce's patented floater that he loves so much. And what happened? He was outscoring Milwaukee for a majority of that second quarter. But when you have a guy whose position is often, it's difficult to articulate what exactly he's doing out there, except, if I had to quantify it, everything. Jumping into passing lanes, really shifty on his feet, super athletic on both ends of the floor, incredibly agile, going to out-hustle pretty much 95% of the league, unless your name is like Bobby Portis. Star players are ultimately just as valuable as the role players on a contending team. If you're going to win a championship, you need 10 to 11 guys to show up for a 7-game series. And if one of those guys can be anything but a liability on both ends of the floor, who I can need to play somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes a game, yeah, I want that on my basketball team. If I can play the role of an agitator and I can go on offense and no one's going to pay attention to me because it's not really what I'm known for, that's free.